Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz saxophonist Dan Willis. We caught up with him in late June 2020 to talk about his newest CD, The Monk Project. He rolled into New York City in a loaded down Dodge Shadow on a crisp fall day in '92, just days after his 24th birthday. Since his arrival on the scene, he's received accolades from several of the top music critics in the city, and he has accumulated quite a story. Enjoy. Your latest project, I guess it's a two-part question I want to know. With the Velvet Gentleman, the Monk Project, talk to me a little bit about, not only paying homage to Monk, but just the idea of releasing an album during a pandemic. A lot of people have extra time, but you can't do anything live to back it up. Kind of talk to me a little bit about that.
We hadn't planned on a pandemic at the time that we had decided on releasing the album. Therein lies the question of, should we put it on hold? Then that question became, how long would we put it on hold for? Was there any benefit to putting it on hold? And other than the fact that there wouldn't be any live performances, per se, I have plans to do something either through Skype or Zoom or the Jam Kazam, I think it is. We will do something on the web, but for the most part, we can all work together by phone or by email or Skype or on the web. So it seemed to me, and also, my enthusiasm to get this out, share it with people, pretty much trumped everything else. So, yeah, it's a little frustrating not being able to do the CD release gig or the tour gigs, but that's what we got, and full steam ahead. But word is getting around about the album. I'm happy about that, and I'm happy to talk about it. It's always fun to talk about Monk with other people because pretty much across the board, everyone loves Monk and has something to share that they love about it. So it's really, to me, kind of just like sitting down with a friend and having a great conversation about Monk or the Velvet Gentleman and my past projects with Satie music or my own compositions. So I think there's a lot of good to come out of it. But, yeah, there is an underlying frustration, sir.
Well, there's another thing, too, that I had heard that, there's a special place for these albums that come out during this time. Do you believe that?
Yeah, I think so. I think people take notice and will remember, perhaps when thinking back to the pandemic and say, oh, yeah, didn't you release an album during that time? Wow, that was crazy. What were you thinking? Something like this, and it is really a world tragedy. It does bring us together in odd ways that we wouldn't normally think of. And, I think people will remember. Certainly, I won't forget that I released an album during a pandemic. I'm pretty aware of the other brave souls out there now that are going ahead with their releases. And, they're making the best of it. I think, in a way, I would like to think it helps people cope. Maybe for a minute, take their minds off of all the problems that this is creating and think about the things that bring us together rather than things that are currently dividing us. That's my hope, anyway.
So talk to me a little bit about when you found out that everything was coming to a close, like early to mid-March. What was your story? How did all that kind of start thinking in that you were entering this new world?
I think I was thinking about it a little bit sooner than the second week of March. Because I do follow the news pretty closely. I was aware of the news reports that we were getting out of China shortly after the first of the year. Some people speculating that it could come to the United States. Were we prepared for it? I had gotten food poisoning first week of March, and at the time I wasn't sure if it was the flu or if it was in fact food poisoning. And that was the first thing that came to my mind was, could this possibly be the virus hitting New York? Because I work quite a bit in New York City and in live situations, and I wondered if I had in fact gotten the virus somehow. As it turns out, it was food poisoning from Chipotle. So,
wow.
And that cleared up in about 48 hours. But yeah, I was thinking about that. Yeah, that was the first week of March. But as everything started to hit, you keep thinking, is this as bad as it could be? Is this actually happening? I work quite a bit on Broadway, and I had just started doing a show that was in previews, and we had been hearing news, and this wasn't in the news yet, but we had been hearing rumors that some people that worked in some other theaters were getting mysteriously ill. Over the course of a couple of days, things progressed. I think at that point, the NBA had decided to close things down. As soon as that happened, everything else fell into place. The people were canceling shows, canceling gigs, and you know the rest of the story. But yeah, I think I was pretty aware early on. Certainly, like most, hoping for the best, that it wasn't going to be as bad as eventually turned out. But yeah, it was on my mind.
Talk to me a little bit about your beginnings, like where you grew up and kind of how jazz became your life.
Well, I come from a musical family. Both my grandparents were musicians, taught violin, piano. My dad was a musician, trumpet player, also played vibes, was a composer, and he attended the Eastman School of Music as a composition student, studying under Howard Hanson. So from a very early age, music was, everywhere, constantly on the radio, record player. My father, as a composition student, was studying scores all the time and listening to records, and so as young as I can remember, listening to Mahler and Leonard Bernstein, and simultaneously was a huge Miles fan. So I remember listening to Bitches Brew as a very, very small boy. So that those two things, classical and jazz, were always in our household. Going to gigs with my father as a kid, concerts in the park, that type of thing. Playing a variety of instruments as a kid, piano, drums, eventually settling on the saxophone and oboe. Also being very aware of my father's studies at the Eastman School of Music, I thought that perhaps if I could get into the Eastman School, that would be a great place for me because, again, classical and jazz were pretty much held on the same level. Yeah, as long as I can remember. I'll tell you one funny story. As a kid, my father had a Volkswagen. I remember one of the very first times I was aware of the cassette player. It may have even been an 8-track. He had Herbie Hancock's electric version of Watermelon Man that starts out with the boo beep, boo beep, boo beep, boo beep, boo beep.
Yeah.
And, that's again, one of my earliest memories as a kid. That and Miles Davis's Milestones. They made a lasting imprint on me, and it's just something that ever since then I've wanted to pursue and learn more about, perform, and try and write.
So you arrive in New York at the age of 24, get settled in. How hard was it in the beginning? How was that process for you?
It wasn't that difficult because I had known a handful of people that had gone to New York ahead of me, maybe by a few years or even more. It was a matter of calling people and letting them know that I was in town. I'd love to do some playing. If you're playing out anywhere, let me know where, and I'll come to the gig and check it out. Maybe I can sit in. So it wasn't terribly difficult in terms of making a living. That probably took a little bit longer, but in terms of meeting people and making connections, I would say New York, and it still does to this day, remain a pretty receptive town in terms of meeting people. Certainly that's with the understanding that you can play. You're a decent person. I don't have any sob stories about moving to the area and falling on my face. It was mostly just meeting people, getting a chance to play, and taking it from there.
What do you like the best about being a musician?
I would say it's the exchange of ideas and finding out what other people like about music, because I find that there's a lot of things that I like in jazz and in classical music, and a lot of times I'll try to find out, okay, why is it that I like this? What is it that made me fall in love with this specific thing? Is it the beautiful melody? Is it the rhythm? Is it the sophistication of the arrangement of the composition? Is it the performance? Is there something about the horn player that really grabs my attention and makes me fall in love with it? And to be able to share that with other people, it's the constant learning. It's the constant showing of appreciation of music and what we all have in common. And very seldom is about what we used to call back in the day jazz policing, like, oh, that isn't jazz, or whatever. And I've never really wanted to be involved in these conversations. It's the best of us, and the best that comes out from us is learning what we love and wanting to share that, and the gaining of knowledge. That's what I love.
So what have you learned over your years of playing with legends and luminaries that has helped you teach the younger players you're around?
Patience, learning to get deeper into sound and how you can make a better sound. Watching someone like Michael Brecker put together a band, rehearse a band, sound check, and then perform was very interesting to me, because when you see someone of his stature, fame, genius up on stage, it looks very simple and effortless. Everything leading up to that point of performance, he was very diligent about, and he enjoyed being diligent. Diligence in his practice, diligence in his sound production, how he worked as hard as he did in his final days at finding as he did when he was a kid. So there's that constant need and want for sounding and playing better. And it takes patience. And I think nowadays it's easy to think that things will come rather easily or quickly. And it really, not a whole lot has changed in music the past several hundreds of years. It's merely a matter of putting in the time, putting in the work, understanding it, sharing it, and playing well with others. But I would say having the patience to let the process happen, not try to hurry it along.
Sure. The one thing, you're in New York, you've done work on Broadway. It's considered the cauldron of jazz worldwide. What do you miss the most about this process of not being able to create live music or being involved in a city like New York? What are you missing the most?
It's being in that moment of counting off the tune and that immediate exchange of ideas, exchange of opinions. Because so much of the inspiration in music, I think for a lot of artists, comes in that moment of not knowing what's going to happen. Yeah, sure, we did plan ahead for this, but we don't know how it's going to go exactly. And those split-second decisions that you make while you're playing or right before you're going to play, those are the things that bring you up in your level of improvisation, getting an idea from improvisation. It can come from anywhere. It almost always comes, hearing a drummer warm up. Sometimes it's so inspiring. Well, so it's the personal connection.
Fine. So let me ask you this: when we do return to live music, and we're beyond COVID-19, and musicians are on stage and people are in the audience, what do you hope we all collectively realize from this absence of live music?
Well, I think it'll be immediate, and I think people will be so happy to have the opportunity to get back either to hear music or to play music that I think that appreciation will be absolutely immediate. But what I hope is that we don't lose the feelings that we have right now, looking back at how we spent our time during the pandemic, how we missed playing together, writing together. My hope is that we don't take it for granted that, yes, we were away from each other. By the time everything gets back to some normality, it's probably going to be close to a year, 9 months at least. And I hope people just don't take that for granted and think like, okay, we're back to normal. Because it won't be normal for quite a while. But I think there's a valuable lesson to have been learned here to appreciate each other's company and knowledge, and again, to not take it for granted.
Agreed. So everyone has a perception or a version of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're the one that's living your life. Who do you think you are?
You mean in a general sense or a specific, like comparing myself to somebody?
Well, no. I mean, everyone looks at you in a certain way. This is 100% you, like what you think you are, because there's people that just see you in a certain way, whether it's your family, your friends, or the people that listen to your music. But
I think I see myself as someone who is continually a student, who is constantly in search of something, the answer to something that I don't know, and that's what I thrive on. I'm excited by, again, finding out something that I wasn't aware of, learning something new, relearning something that I thought I knew. I think I'm a diligent person, and that's what I enjoy. I enjoy working hard at things, and not afraid to fail, because we fall on our face more times than we slam dunk it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Dan, thank you for taking a minute out to talk to Neon Jazz today. Stay safe. Good luck with everything. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Joe. You stay safe yourself.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Dan for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Davino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.